Hi, Acadiana. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Let's Talk Tropics. Pretty day here in Acadiana, although still kind of on the warm side, but it looks like we've got that cold front that's going to go ahead and push through here a little bit later on, and that is going to give us some nice fall-like weather as we head into the second half of the week. We're still watching a couple of areas in the tropics. No named storms right now. We have one official disturbance, 94L. Coordinates are there on the left-hand side of the screen. And as we talked about yesterday, that southwestern Caribbean area wasn't really on the National Hurricane Center's radar, but it is now for today as some of the models are continuing to try to develop something there over the extreme southwestern Caribbean. So let's take care of a couple of the particulars first. We do have a mix of sun and clouds, still kind of feeling muggy out there, 84 with that dew point at 71. So heat index kind of flirting with 90 right now. A little breeze out of the west at 8 and the pressure at 30.03, but those winds are going to start to shift more to the north later this evening and overnight, and some gusty winds are going to come in too. So temperatures are going to be quite cool as you wake up tomorrow morning. Looking at our traffic cams, weather-wise, you don't have any issues out there, but it looks like there's a bit of a backup there on the westbound lanes of I-10. That's coming from Bro Bridge, and the traffic facing the camera there in the top left-hand corner is heading westbound, and you can still see there, it looks like it's going up to about University, but if you look up there toward Ambassador Caffrey, it looks like that westbound area is cleared up. So it doesn't look like it's a super long delay there if you've got to head out maybe toward Lake Charles. If you're going on to the I-10 coming westbound, if you get on Louisiana Avenue, you're going to run into some traffic there. So let's get into the weather side of things. We do have that mix of sun and clouds. So there's one frontal boundary, kind of dissolved front, that's kind of draped across the area, and then a secondary frontal boundary that's across, let's say, just north of the Arklatex. And you can also see there on the map, you got a bit more of a counterclockwise circulation up here, kind of a big trough of low pressure, but that is going to open the door for some of that colder air to come down from the Canadian prairies, and we will feel those windy conditions coming in later tonight. And for our friends who do like to do some boating, you're probably familiar with what happens to the Gulf of Mexico's nearshore waters after a cold front comes through. Things get pretty rough out there, and today it's not so bad with still a bit of a southerly breeze, so the seas are only running about 1 to 3 feet with winds out of the west at 5 to 10 knots. But tomorrow, a small craft advisory is going to be in place as that cold front comes through, and you're going to get some pretty rough seas out there once that front passes on through. So there's a look at the satellite of the Gulf of Mexico. Everything nice and clear. You see the little bit of moisture that's kind of just ahead of the front. It isn't bringing us any rain. It's just bringing some clouds out there, and we could certainly use the rain, as much of the Acadiana area is now in at least a slight drought status. We haven't seen any measurable precipitation here in Lafayette since September the 24th. So you're talking about a good 3 weeks there, and I don't see any rains in the forecast for at least the next 6 or 7 days. In the Caribbean, we are still watching that southwestern area there. And again, yesterday we were kind of talking about it, and we've been talking about it here for about a week or so, that the models have been kind of indicating something there. But the National Hurricane Center seems to now be biting on there as they've lit that part up in yellow now as a low-end chance for development. And then, of course, we're still watching Disturbance 94L. It is kind of a broad circulation at the surface, and you get some occasional thunderstorms kind of developing along with it, but it is very disorganized. We're not seeing a whole lot of change as we've seen back there across the central part of the Atlantic, at least over the last couple of days. As far as your tropical weather outlook, again, medium chance for 94L that's out there in the middle part of the Atlantic, and you see that little area there kind of hugging the Honduran, the Nicaraguan coast, the coast of Belize as well. That is hatched in about a 30% chance for some development here over the next few days. So we'll get to that in just a little while. So we're going to focus in on 94L because I think 94L is the one that probably has the better chance of getting a name here in the next couple of days, and that name would be Nadine, and that would be our 14th name system of the 2024 hurricane season. And if we get to number 14 on names, then we've achieved an average season, but we still have about 5 or 6 weeks left before the season is over. And there is the position. If you want the exact coordinates, they're there on the left-hand side of your screen. 16.1 north, 42.6 west, winds about 30 miles per hour, and the pressure right now is holding at 1,010 millibars. Model data has not changed a whole lot from yesterday. We still think this low is going to continue to make a westerly track. Again, this is more of the traditional track you would see a central or eastern tropical wave move during the middle part of the hurricane season, but we are in October. And this is the time where you start to get those bigger troughs coming off of the North American continent, and it does seem to turn more of our tropical systems more in a northeasterly direction and kind of curve away. Usually about this time of the year they kind of do something like that, but pretty much all the models are in agreement that we're going to see more of a westward track as kind of a double barrel high pressure region kind of holds over much of the Atlantic and really over the eastern half of the United States too. So with those ridges of high pressure staying pretty strong, you're probably going to continue to see more of a general westward direction. Now, we don't think there's going to be a whole lot happening with Disturbance 94L today, and probably not tomorrow either, but maybe going into Thursday and Friday, we could see some organization and the possibility of seeing some of those wind speeds starting to pick up. So there's your day 3. So that would be about Thursday, and you can see some of the models are getting into that tropical storm mode, and a couple of them as you go into day 4 and 5 are going up into hurricane mode, but just about all of the models are north of tropical depression once you get out to about day 3 here. So that's why we think that this might get the name Tropical Storm Nadine somewhere down the road. As far as the HWRF, of course, now that we have an official disturbance, some of our more our hurricane focused models are up and running for this particular item, and you can see that it doesn't do a whole lot with the HWRF until you start to get over to the northern Leeward Islands, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and then you see kind of a tightly wound system there halfway between Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, and the max winds that this kind of throws out here looks like it goes up to about 83 knots. So you are talking hurricane at that point, but that wouldn't be until sometime either Friday or Saturday. Friday or Saturday, going toward the end of the week and going into the weekend. So that's what the HWRF is calling for, the possibility of a hurricane. The HAFS model is not quite as robust on development. It's just kind of a weak low pressure area, then it disappears for a while, and then you kind of get a little low, try to restart there over Puerto Rico or perhaps there north of the Dominican Republic. And the wind speeds on these really don't get too strong, maybe up to about 50 knots. So you're talking about a tropical storm, but at least in a couple of frames here, the HAFS model does indicate that this could possibly become a tropical storm and get a name sometime down the road. So let's kind of focus again here too. We're going to stay on 94L, but we're also going to focus in on the tropical wave or the disturbance or cluster of thunderstorms that we're looking at here over Central America. So one thing is you've got the Central American gyre that continues to kind of swirl around in this particular area. So we're probably getting just maybe a little bit of action from that there. And then just to the east, we've got more of an upper level low that's going to traverse the Caribbean and kind of move in that direction. So it is going to be moving just to the north of this swirl that's right here over the southwestern part of the Caribbean. So that might help to energize it a little bit, but we don't think there's going to be a lot of movement in this moisture that's here over the southwestern Caribbean over the next couple of days. And if it is going to develop, it's going to have to get some influence from some outside sources to really get itself going. So the GFS, this is the earlier model run from this morning. The 12Z for some reason was not running by the time we got this. Usually this is done at least going out 10 days. It's usually done at about 11:45. So I haven't even seen the GFS start up on this one yet. So we're going to use the previous model that shows not just a bit of a low pressure area trying to develop here near Central America, but again, it's not anything super strong, and then it moves inland across Central America, bringing some torrential rains there for Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala, and into Belize as well. And then if you look a little bit farther to the east as the thing has started over. So here we are Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday you've got a bit of a low, and then going into next week you get a piece breaking apart going in this direction, but there's a little bit of a low that kind of scooted its way off toward the west. So very inconclusive on the GFS model on what it wants to do with 94L or what could possibly be Nadine. It may whip up and get that little bit of a low to move over the Atlantic, or we may have a piece of it kind of breaking off because it's kind of right here, and then you see a bit of a low kind of drifting there, but you also see this other piece going up here, up toward the north. So very inconclusive. I guess what we could say that is conclusive is that big ridge of high pressure that's going to be here over the southeastern coast of the United States is basically going to protect the U.S. from any tropical weather moving in our direction. Euro model from earlier this morning is also showing more of a moisture buildup here over the western part of the Caribbean, perhaps a very weak low pressure area moving across Central America. So that would be pretty similar to what we would see with the GFS. And then farther down, you see a little low there, which might be Nadine. And then kind of like the GFS, it has it break off and move off toward the northeast over parts of the Atlantic Ocean. We could either see the low from that, or we might even be seeing another low developing along a frontal boundary that's going to be there over parts of the western Atlantic. So again, pretty inconclusive on the Euro model. Now the Canadian and the Icon, we're going to go through those two because these are brand new. These are the 12Z models, so these have just come down. And this one actually has a little bit a bigger low from what would be 94L moving off toward the west, but it doesn't seem to be as robust on any thing trying to develop here over Central America. So the Canadian model seems to be a lot more focused on what would be 94L, and it takes kind of a straight shot across the Atlantic Ocean and across the northern part of the Leeward and Windward Islands and the northern Greater Antilles. So you're talking about Haiti, Dominican Republic, Cuba. If it continues to move over land like that, of course, it's not going to get very strong. And the Canadian model doesn't seem to be indicating anything super strong here. Probably a tropical depression or maybe a low-end tropical storm. And if it makes its way that way, it could have a better chance maybe over toward the Yucatan Peninsula. And then finally, the Icon model, which yesterday was inconclusive because remember, this one only goes out 7 days, but it's got a broad trough of low pressure again over Central America and then pushing westward. Not really doing a whole lot, maybe trying to reemerge in parts of the Bay of Campeche, but it doesn't show anything significant. And then in those final frames, if you kind of start over here and you watch what might be 94L there, as we get into this is Friday, this is Saturday, this is Sunday, and then going into the early part of next week, it's kind of following that same line that the Canadian model is, just kind of keeping 94L as a very weak low pressure area and continuing on toward the west. Notice that big ridge of high pressure, though, is here over the southeastern United States in all 4 of the model runs. So the threat of anything coming toward the U.S. coastline looks pretty slim right now. There are going to be some troughs moving across the midsection of the country, but if these things stay pretty weak down here to the south, they're not going to get attracted by that and try to move their way off toward the north. So right now, it looks like we're in really good shape when it comes to tropical weather staying away from the U.S., but when you get into October, especially mid and late October, the Caribbean, the Bahamas, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, down toward Puerto Rico, Haiti, and into the northern parts of the Leeward and Windward Islands and the Virgin Islands, those are more of the hot spots that you see things happen during the latter part of hurricane season. Shear is relatively low still here over the southwestern Caribbean, so again, anything that wants to just kind of fester there might have a little bit of a chance. And also these areas out here where the potential of 94L could move also is indicating some fairly low wind shear there. So it does have a chance for some development. And the water temperatures are certainly warm enough, especially as it moves closer to the Caribbean, where some of those water temperatures are pushing 85, 86, and even 87 degrees. Global tropical hazard outlook is going to get a refresh later this afternoon, so I'll have the new one for you tomorrow. But you can see going into next week, this is from last week's issue, it still kept the western part of the Caribbean kind of in an area that we could see some tropical development, and that's starting October 16th, which is tomorrow. And then it still keeps it a little bit on the hot side there for the final week in October, October 23rd through the 29th. Again, this is going to be refreshed later today. So I'll have this map for you brand new as we do Let's Talk Tropics on Wednesday. So not a whole lot going on, but there is still something to watch. But because this has been such a really unusual hurricane season with such a robust start with Beryl at the very beginning of the season, and then everything just shutting down for the rest of July and most of August, and then really things ramping up here over the last several weeks. I don't know if you know this, if you haven't watched Let's Talk Tropics, but we've had 5 landfalling hurricanes on the Gulf Coast this year, which is almost a record. The 6 is the record, so we've almost hit a record, and we're still looking at really an average hurricane season overall. But of course, it seems a lot busier when you have a number of hurricanes striking the same part of the region over and over and over again. So it does feel a little bit busier. So we'll look at this, and hopefully we'll start to see the rest of the Atlantic and things starting to maybe shut down as we start to move into the first part of November. Well, I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. I sure enjoy our midday lunchtime visits. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. And between broadcasts, make sure you follow my social media pages both on Facebook and X. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. I will see you tomorrow morning about 7:30-ish for Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. See you tomorrow.